My first recollection of Las Cruces, we were driving and moving from California, and there was a sign about halfway between Deming and Las Cruces that said, "Welcome to Las Cruces, New Mexico, home of 16,000 friendly people." It was a big billboard. And that was my very first thing. And as a kid, I was a little apprehensive about moving, but kind of excited. We moved there, and my mom had health problems. She was getting pneumonia in Northern California where we lived, so she had to go to a dry area. And my aunt and uncle lived there. My uncle, Joe Miller, was a teacher at Las Cruces High School, and did that for his whole life, went to New Mexico State. And so we went out to live with them. And that's how he started. And got to go to a lot of nice schools. Started at South Ward School, which burnt down a few years ago, and as I understand it, burnt down again now as the administrative offices. Spent some time, got to go to a lot of new schools. Went to Valley View Grade School when it was brand new, and then went to Las Cruces High School A Wing when it was brand new. I was in 5th grade. Ended up at Carl Conley. So those are the early days. And school, the city was much smaller and quieter. I walked to high school for a while, walked to junior high, and eventually got a scooter to ride to high school. So that's a lot of fond memories. Very small town. I remember going out to swim at the university, and we would walk all the way up El Paseo. It was a long walk to go swimming at the university pool. Well, I had a couple of jobs that were kind of defining moments in my life. The first one, my very first job, I got a job selling Spud Nuts door to door. And Spud Nuts are potato-based donuts. I don't know if they're still around, but sold them for 85 cents a dozen, and I got to keep 15 cents. And I learned at a very early age that I was good at that. I was the #1 Spud Nut salesman, and I could, I'd move 20, 30 dozen a day, which was, quite a bit at the time. But I would, the shop was at Idaho and Solano, and I would walk or ride my bicycle from there down to Main Street in Picacho, and I'd sell Spud Nuts all the way, and that was my route. And I'd do that every day. I just stopped people in the street, wanted to know if they want to buy Spud Nuts. And one of the best experiences I ever had was there's this little man walking down the street, and I stopped him, and he said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "Let me see." So I hand him the bag, and he eats about half of them. And he says, "No, I don't think so." So I learned about the rules of business early on. My senior year in high school was pretty interesting. I wrestled as a junior in high school, and I played in the band and did a lot of things. But after wrestling and band were over, after wrestling was over, I quit studying, so I didn't have a real good grade point average. So my senior year, I had to really step up and do a lot of things just to graduate. So it was kind of anticlimactic. I finally graduated, and that summer I thought, well, I better do something. And my mother had always been pushing on me to go to school, and so my stepfather gave me a car, gave me $100 a month allowance, and paid my tuition. And he said, "Go to New Mexico State." So I went, and I spent the first semester in the student union building, learned how to play snooker. I was really good at it. However, I didn't make any grades. And so I started out my college career with a less than stellar grade point. And took the spring semester off, and then went in the Army for a couple of years. Al Conley was an accounting professor. Great guy, taught me a lot. And I was a mechanic. I had a little garage. I had my own business when I was going to school. This guy I went to the Army with. He and I opened a foreign car garage, which was pretty interesting to do at that point in time. But we had that and was going to school. And Al he came to me and he said, "You know, Tom, you're good at what you do," but he says, "I don't understand why you just don't go run your garage." He says, "That's a far better profession than what you're getting into." And he really had a wonder for people that could fix things mechanical. And he'd bought an Audi that just wouldn't run, so I saw him a lot when he'd come over. And the other guy, of course, that you can't go through school when I did, not worry about, is Pappy Haight. He's just a tremendous teacher, a disciplinarian, and I think at the time I was scared to death of him, but he's a genuine, caring individual. And I guess the crowning moment in school with him is when I really learned how things work. Is he came to class one day and he said, "Okay," he required all the homework to be done in pen, no erasures. If you made a mistake, you drew a line through it and you went on. And he said, "Today I've been told by the school that I'm too strict and that from now on I have to allow each of you to do your homework in pencil." So I'm doing that. He says, "But remember, no erasures." And so I was sitting there and I thought, well, if you can't erase, you may as well do it in pen. And my buddy, he said, "Well, I'm going to do mine in pencil." And I will tell you, my grades were consistently higher than his because I did it in ink. So I learned that come back and do what the professor wants. My progression at HP is kind of interesting because I started out, as I say, as an office manager in Las Cruces, and we had a lot of traveling sales reps that came through because we were a small office. The whole office was like 3,200 square feet, had 14 or 15 people, and so couldn't get a full-time sales rep. So things like bid openings at Memorial General Hospital and bid openings at White Sands, I would go to them just because there was nothing else to do. I mean, there was nobody else around, and so I would be the HP representative. Well, it turns out that's part of the sales job. And so what I didn't realize was because I was filling in the holes, if you will, in the company, I was learning new skill sets. And so it was really kind of insidious to me. It wasn't something I planned to do. But I just got better and better at those things that were not the job I was set up to do. And the job I was set up to do was becoming easier and easier to do in a smaller and smaller percentage. And finally, one of the district managers said, you know, you're doing all the sales stuff, why don't you become a salesman? And at the time, I didn't understand that. My only exposure as salesman, they'd come to town, they'd take me to lunch, and I'd think, this is a great job, all I do is go to lunch. And so he said, want the job? And I said, yes, I do, and trying to get me to take a job in El Paso. So I'd agreed to it, and about a week later, I got a call and said, I've got your job, but it's not in El Paso, it's in Denver. And so I had to call home, and he said, I need an answer today. So within 4 hours, I decided to uproot my family from Las Cruces and move to Denver. And it was hard because here it is, it's not Las Cruces, and it's cold. I already had experience with Los Alamos, but we took it. And it turned out to be the best move I ever had because I went up and I really learned that those lunches that the sales reps had are only when they're taking somebody from the office out to get them to do something. As I used to speed across Denver on my lunch hour eating a hot dog on the way thinking, now I know what it's really like. HP is a very progressive company in a lot of ways, in business acumen and pushing the envelope, trying to do things, thinking out of the box, trying to change society, change the way people work. But they get that way by going back to the very basics, which is treating individuals with respect, allowing you to have the room to succeed, the room to fail under your own terms, and the room to atone for those failures and move forward. And so taking that basic respect for the individual and that people are the most important part of the corporation, and I'm real pleased we haven't lost that. And that's a very difficult thing to maintain. So I think that's part of the progressiveness, and to think about better ways to make people work. We've got a lot of pioneering things in work at home and flexible work hours and different ways that you can get your job done. I think those are all things that make people more effective, and when you make people more effective, they do more things for you. Yeah, success doesn't come without a lot of support. And if you look at my support structure, it's come from my wife, who is one of the most intuitive and articulate women I've ever been around. I'm just thrilled to have been married to her, and I hope I stay that way. But having the extended family and having role models. My mother worked very, very hard her whole life and was always taking on extra tasks and never complained, and she got ahead by hard work. She didn't have a high school education. She didn't get a diploma, but she was very successful. And so having her as a role model, saying, oh, you know, half of life is showing up. The other half is putting the results on the table. And she taught me that. My father worked very hard, had a 5.5-day-a-week job, 6-day-a-week job for hourly wages, and got along very well through life. And he taught me also that you just have to be there every day. You have to put work on the table and have people see the value. Now, my stepfather, Brian Hawkins, taught me more about life, I guess, than anybody. And if I have to put my success early in my life on one person, be on Brian, because he did teach me the work ethic, and he did teach me to look behind the curtain and see what else is there, and to have goals and aspirations, which, you know, when you're young, growing up, it's hard to get that. You have to have somebody tell you that you can achieve more than you think you can. And so Brian's done a good job for me on that. The education process today, and we've talked about this over and over, does a great job with the basics. And you really need to have the basic understanding of whatever field you're going to be in, whether it's business or engineering. You have to have the tools. And I think New Mexico State does a great job of that, as do a lot of schools. The key, though, is interaction. Interacting with people, interacting with groups, being able to get work done through groups or through other people. I find a lot of really, really good individual contributors. They can do things on their own, but you ask them to work with another person or another group of people, and that's when the friction starts. And so it's learning what is important to other people, how to put win-win scenarios together so that everybody in the group or in the job at hand come out feeling like they've accomplished something. And that's the key thing that people should be learning. And I'm just real pleased. I'm starting to see that happen. There are more and more people that are able to work in groups over the last few years, and they're able to understand the needs of the individuals and to play it back. So that, I think, is a big key. The changing nature of businesses, first thing is that comes to my mind is speed. Everything happens much faster. There are a lot of things that now take your time that didn't happen before. And a good example, email. Today, I mean, I can tell you right now, I probably have 150 unread emails today that have come in over the weekend. And you say, all right, now, if the first 2 hours of my day or 3 hours of my day are answering email, oh, and then by the way, you have voicemail, which is another 40 or 50 messages. So a person could spend their whole career peering into a computer screen or talking onto a telephone, never seen an individual. And that's a real challenge. I mean, it's something I struggle with on a regular basis, because you need to do these things to run the business. But how did we run it before that? And how could we get away with it? And I've actually thought, what if I just turned off voicemail and email for 2 or 3 months? Would I be less effective? Would I be more effective? And it's an experiment I'd like to do. I don't know how to do it. But I think that they become necessities, and they become the enablers for us to ramp up to the higher speeds and the faster response times. People no longer are accepting of a 1 or 2 day response. They want it right now. You know, and so we've kind of compressed our lives again even more. I think a couple of years ago I talked about time compression, and I was feeling that we had to get better at that. Well, it's accelerating. And so those needs in communication and how you get to be 2 places at once or 3 places at once, and how you're effective at doing that. And so it's managing the catastrophes, if you will, in the daily life about who do I communicate with first.
By the time I entered New Mexico State University, I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. The transition was a fella named Stanley Watkins and I had once stayed in Tennyson, and I'd been active in track, so I just naturally thought of going to New Mexico State since that was home, and I was able to get a tennis scholarship then. So I was just more interested in being able to get into college on some sort of basis, and it seemed to me as though business administration was the thing to do, but you know, I really would be kidding you and myself to say that I had any definitive goal, because I really didn't. I was just interested in playing sports and going to college because it seemed like the thing I needed to do, and I had always been enterprising. I'd always been, you know, doing things. I remember probably when I was 7 or 8 years old in Ruidoso, setting us up a shoe shine stand on a street corner with my little sister, who was about 5 at the time, trying to just make money. I'd always been trying to do something, but I didn't have any real goal in mind. I think the key to running a successful company is to go with a vision, but realize your own limitations. Don't let your ego get involved, because that'll usually shoot you down. Surround yourself with good people and listen to what those people have to say. Anybody that builds a company without surrounding themselves with good people, if they're successful, they're lucky. I just really don't know of very many people that have built companies that haven't had awfully good people around them. Listen to those people and trust them. And make your best decisions based on all the information you can gather, particularly from those people. And don't take yourself too seriously a lot of the time. The trust of people is the most important thing my nature is non-confrontational. So it was a philosophy I developed early on that if I would trust someone until I found that I couldn't trust them or they did something to destroy that trust, but that didn't mean I wouldn't trust the next person. And as a result, I was able to get much more accomplished. I quit looking back over my shoulder so much, and it just made things much easier. You and I both know that there are just a lot of people that you can't trust. But if you go into any kind of relationship, particularly with key people, and you don't trust them, or you're skeptical, like, say, prove to me that I can trust you, then to me you've got it backwards. And you spend a lot of time posturing and not really getting things done and creating the wrong atmosphere and environment. So I feel very strongly like trust is a very crucial, integral part of business to begin with. What type of boss would my employee say I was? I think that, I guess the best analysis of that I can give you is probably how they are with me now, years after I've been their boss in effect. And I think that it's really good. I've really been surprised because when we were out looking at our new regional jet, and those people were coming up to me that originally started with the company and just talking and saying, do you remember all the things we did and how we got it going? And I've had people that used to work for us in the drilling industry or the oil industry, and different people. I see them all the time in Dallas with the airline industry, and people relating to my civic work that just, I can tell that they still like me. And so maybe at the time I didn't really know how they thought about me, that apparently it was okay